Let's introduce relation-based ABAC, or attribute-based access control, which allows permissions based on dynamic relationships rather than static roles. With ABAC, permissions might depend on who created the document, when it was last modified, or other contextual data. For instance, an author might have exclusive editing access to their document, while others can only view it. This model is powerful for systems where permissions vary frequently and need to reflect real-world relationships. Relation-based ABAC adds flexibility by letting permissions follow the user across documents they're connected to, without needing constant updates to the access list. So let's introduce a more complicated technique into our authorization model, something we call relation-based ABAC or relation-based attribute-based access control. And the goal of this is that non-published documents can be viewed by editors or owners, but if you're only assigned as a viewer, you should not be able to view a document until it is published. And to achieve this, we're not going to touch our user, organization, group, or folder types, but we are going to add a new relation to the document type. And this new relation is going to be published. So we want to be able to set a published version, a published document as the published relation to a document. And to use this, we've also changed our can-view relationship or can-view permission. And first of all, you'll see that we still have the can-edit here, which means if you're an editor, if you're an owner, or you have the can-edit from a parent, which means you're an editor of an owner of a parent folder, you should be able to view this document regardless of its published state. But if you're only a viewer, you'll see that we have introduced these brackets here. So when you're a viewer, we introduce a bit more of a complexity, which means you need to be a viewer and you need to be a viewer from the published document using this AND keyword. And to see how that works exactly, let's look at the tuples we need to make this work. So first of all, we are going to create a new document in the root folder. Document not published has the folder root as its parent. We're going to give public access to this document not published. So in theory, any user should be able to have access to this document. But because we've introduced this complexity of a published state, nobody should be able to view this until it's published, unless you're an editor or an owner. And lastly, we set our public roadmap document as the published document for itself, which means that this document is now published. Then let's look at the tests. First of all, we have our user John again, which cannot edit and cannot view the document not published. Even though we gave public access, the document not published is not published. It doesn't have that document as the published relationship. So the user John should not be able to view it. But the user Peter is related to this document as an editor or owner. So therefore he should be able to edit and view it regardless of its published status. And lastly, because we gave the public roadmap its published document, we are still able, or user John is still able to view this document because it is now published and available for public access. So if we run our test again, step 5, you'll see that we now have 5 tests and they're still all passing, so our logic makes sense. So in this step we introduce the published relation and we say any viewer should be a viewer of this document and a viewer from the published document, and then we've set the document itself, in this case public roadmap, as the published document, which means that any viewer of the document public roadmap should not be able to view it because it is now published. So let's move on to the next step.